Good morning. This is Surya Tilagam, Assistant Professor of English, Wales Institute of Science, Technology and Advanced Studies, Chennai. Today we are going to see the unit number 1 in literary criticism. The topic is On the Sublime. In this unit, the students will be able to understand the characteristics of Renaissance criticism, and also the students will be familiarized with Longinus, the ancient Greek critic, and his critical principles. Let's start with what is Renaissance criticism. The Renaissance criticism is the criticism which was introduced in the Renaissance period. And which is Renaissance period? The Renaissance period covers around the 14th century until the mid 17th century. The term Renaissance refers to rebirth or rediscovery of the values, ethics, and styles of the ancient classical Greece and Rome. Renaissance literary criticism took root in defenses of poetry and dialogues on the language and literary imitation in Italy in the 14th and 15th centuries. Renaissance has reached maturity in the 16th century Italy, where the recovery of the Aristotle's poetics occasioned a series of commentaries that extended the elaboration of comprehensive theories of poetry. In the 16th century, Aristotle's poetics was brought back, and people got interest, especially writers and critics. They got interest in Aristotle poetics, and they started following the principles of writing laid down by Aristotle. And it is indebted to Horace, Aristotle, and Plato, roughly in this order. That is, Renaissance criticism is indebted to the ancient classical critics like Horace, Aristotle, and Plato. And Renaissance criticism gives importance to protecting or defending poetry against the attacks of its ancient as well as modern enemies. That is, most of the writers and thinkers, they find fault with poetry, uh, stating that poetry is a waste of time, just like Stephen Goss in the Puritan uh, attacked poetry. Like that, so many thinkers and philosophers, they started attacking poetry. And this Renaissance criticism started defending those attacks, defending poetry against those attacks. And the Renaissance critiques see literature as imitation, but they differ from Plato and Aristotle, who conceived imitation as imitating some persons or things in nature. Whereas Horace and Longinus, they saw imitation as imitating the ancient writers. For Plato and Aristotle, imitation means imitating the objects or the nature. But Horace and Longinus also said that literature is a kind of imitation, but here the imitation of other writers. In this respect, Horace and Longinus differed from Aristotle and Plato. Renaissance criticism adopts the Horatian formula that literature should teach and delight. Yes, this is the purpose of literature, or the function of literature should be teaching and delight. It should teach some values as well as it should please the readers. It emphasizes the classical unities, the unity of time, place, and action. In drama, especially of all the three unities, they give importance to unity of place. The Renaissance critics advocate the use of the vernacular in writing, the use of the vernacular, the regional language. The Renaissance critics do not accept the mixing of genres, that is, mixing of tragedy with comedy. So they don't accept the concept called tragicomedy. But Shakespeare preferred that. But the classical writers, they didn't accept mixing of these tragic and comic elements in the same drama. So also the Renaissance critics do not accept the mixing of genres as tragicomedy because it can destroy the sense of decorum according to them. Yes, they believe that if we mix up the tragic and comic elements, the drama will lose its decorum, the standards. So they don't allow the mixing of tragic and comic elements in the same drama. Now let's see what are the features of Renaissance criticism. Because they believe, what is their idea on the theory of imitation. The Renaissance critics' theory of imitation is different from that of Plato and Aristotle, as we already mentioned. Imitation for Plato and Aristotle was the imitation of persons and things in nature, whereas Renaissance critics like Horace and Longinus, they believe that imitation literature should imitate other writers, the earlier writers. Then, regarding the truth value or the didactic purpose of literature, Renaissance critics adopted the Horatian formula that literature should teach and delight. And according to them, poetry should teach some values at the same time. It should be done delightfully. It should give pleasure and it can convey some moral ideas or values. Now let's see Longinus as a critic. So who is Longinus? Longinus is an ancient Greek critic who lived in the 3rd century AD. He was so important, remarkable next to Aristotle. How Aristotle is very important in philosophy as well as in literature. And next to him is Longinus in the importance. His important work is On the Sublime. It is considered to be an immortal critical document of great worth and significance. It deals with the principle of sublimity in the world of writing. And it was Longinus who was the first European critic who emphasized the importance of style. Yes, this is the greatest contribution of Longinus. Longinus was the first person to emphasize on the style of writing, how to achieve greatness in writing. And he made use of both the historical and comparative methods in literary criticism. So his contribution to literary criticism is also significant. And his book, this On the Sublime, can be taken as a monumental book in the style of writing. And regard to his contribution to um, the critics were divided in their opinions. Some critics consider Longinus as a romantic critic, and some critics describe him as a classical critic. Let's see in which way he is romantic and in which way he is classic. Longinus is romantic in temper because for him, literature is not a mechanical work but a thing of spirit of imagination. Yes, as a romanticist, he described literature as a product of imagination, of feeling, and it is a gift of communication. So, in this respect, he can be called a romanticist. And he directs attention from the technical to the more elusive and spiritual sides of literature. And he insists upon passion, ecstasy, beauty, and the transporting effect, and imagination, intensity, inspiration, exaltation, and very importantly, subjectivity and emotion. So, this way he bears all the characteristics of a romanticist. His love for beauty, art, and for violating the rules of the ancients, all these features make him a romantic critic. And he also believed in the romantic function of literature that is pleasing. The, the romanticists believed that literature, the function of literature is to please. And so also Longinus believed that the function of literature is to please the readers. And he discarded the immoral function of literature. And it is he who sowed the seeds of romanticism. We can say that he is a pioneer of romanticism in critical field, critical in the world of critics. He can be called a pioneer in the field of aesthetic appreciation of literature. And we can also call him the grandfather of Romanticism. Then, some critics describe him as a classicist, and let's see how he can be called a classicist. Longinus is a classicist in taste. The classical qualities of Longinus are he showed a great reverence for the ancient Greek models and for tradition, and he also advocated imitation, just as the ancient writers like Aristotle and Plato. So, in this respect, he can be called a classicist. And moreover, he laid emphasis on order and grandeur of thought and language. And this is also one of the features of classical literature. And also, he believed in rules and regulations. Okay. So, these characteristics make him a classicist, a classical critic. As a classicist, he stands for restraint, fitness, correctness, and selection and balance. He stands for the use of refined and cultivated poetic style. Yes, so his emphasis on style that also makes him a classical critic. And his contribution to criticism. He's a great critic. Longinus is a great critic. He's not only a romanticist or classicist. He's a he is more than that, and he's a great critic. Ultimately, he's a great critic. Whether he's a romanticist or classicist, he's the greatest critic. His theory of aestheticism, his emphasis on imagination, his practical criticism, his wide outlook make him a modern critic. So apart from arguing that whether he's a classicist or a romanticist, we have to accept him or admit him as a greatest critic, and he is a modern critic because he accepts both the classical and romantic ideas of criticism. He says that the aim of literature or art is to instruct, to delight, and to persuade. So, in this respect, he's a modern thinker. This Longinus maintains a fantastic balance between classicism, romanticism, and modernism. And now let's discuss what all the points given in the book on the sublime. On the sublime is the first and a unique treatise on style of writing. It is actually in structure. It is a fragmentary treatise on aesthetics and literary criticism. It is not a complete one because on the sublime is a part of a longer work. So we have got only the part of the book, and the remaining part of the book is lost. Originally, it was written in Greek, and it was in the form of an address to a Roman. Though it is written in Greek language, it was translated into many languages, including English. It is written in Greek in the third century, but the exact year of its publication is not obviously known, but it is all based on the conjecture. And the other title for this book is On Great Writing, on the sublime or on the great writing. And in this book, Longinus proposes 5 sources for great writing or to achieve greater style. He proposes the 5 sources which can lead to great writing, namely great thoughts, strong emotions, noble diction, effective word arrangement, and figures of speech. So these are all the 5 sources or 5 elements which can make a writing into a greater one, which can give great style to a writing. And in order to emphasize all these 5 elements, he discusses some examples of both great writing, that is strong writings and weak writing. And he has taken these examples from over 1,000 years. And in his book, he quotes some of the greatest writers like Homer, Plato, Sappho, Aristophanes, Demosthenes, and Cicero. And also, he quotes the book of Genesis from the Hebrew Bible. And Longinus describes greatness in writing as a combination of the innate genius and learned skill. So a writer should have innate genius as well as he has to acquire skills through learning. A great writer must also possess and exhibit moral excellence. And one theory about Longinus states that he may have avoided publishing his own writing so as to preserve his modesty and moral excellence, a decision that might explain on the Sublime's uncertain authorship. That is, on Sublime, we are not very much sure about the authorship of On the Sublime, but the later conjectures say that it should have been written by Longinus because he was the one who was emphasis on the great style and greatness of writing. So the authorship was assumed to him. On the Sublime is written in epistolary form. It is in the form of a letter addressed to a Roman called Postumius Terentius, who is a cultured Roman friend of Longinus. So he has addressed this work in the form of a letter to his Roman friend. And he has written this letter as a response to a treatise for another rhetorician called Caecilius. Caecilius, first century rhetorician, he has uh, said something about writing, and for as a response to his treatise, he has written. Longinus has written this critical treatise. Now, what he says for um, as the sources of great writing, or what are all the principles of great writing. Longinus writes to his friend about the features of great writing, and according to him, the most essential principle of great writing is that it should take the reader out of himself. That is the transportation effect. So any writing can be accepted as a great writing if it can transport the reader and if it could impress him with power and emotion. The great writers must have both natural talent and disciplined training. So they should have innate talent as well as the learned scholarliness, the disciplined training. They must use figures of speech, rhetorical devices wisely, and arranging their words with care and artistry, and avoiding stylistic excess and false emotion. Yes. So just because the writer has to use stylistic devices, that should not be in excess. And there should be emotion in a great writing, but the emotion should not be a false one. And the writers must express sincere passion, sincere emotion, and in doing so, they should excite the same emotion in the readers. So, only when the emotion which is expressed in a writing is sincere and real, it will evoke the same emotion in the readers. Imitating the great literary geniuses of the past, such as Homer or Demosthenes, is a valid way for a writer to achieve greatness, according to Longinus. His Longinus says we can achieve greatness by imitating the great writers. The great writer must possess a moral high mindedness that will shine forth and influence readers to be morally good as well. So they themselves should be good disciplinarian and moralistic, and then only they can induce the same kind of morality in the readers. Now let's see what all the sources of sublimity as mentioned by Longinus in his work. The first one is the grandeur of thought. The thought that is expressed in a work should be a grand one or a noble one. Grandeur of thought is one of the principal sources of the sublime. It is largely the gift of nature. It is essential for a sublime work. And sublimity demands skillful selection and organization of material. Yes. So we have to choose the material or theme or subject in a skillful way, and we should organize those material in the proper order. And details should be chosen to form an organic whole. So the details should be the points should be organized um, in a pattern so as to give the work an organic whole. The imitation is also one of the significant parts which lead to sublimity. If we imitate the masters, classical masters, that will automatically give some sublimity to our work. And the second element he mentions is the strong emotion. The strong and inspired passion is the second significant source of the sublime. The vigorous treatment of it is essential for acquiring sublimity. So, a work or a great writer has to um, infuse his real passion or a sincere passion in his work. According to Longinus, nothing makes so much for a grandeur as true emotion in the right place. So we should express our true emotion in in the apt place. That will give greatness to our work. And the use of figures of speech. The use of figures is the third principal source of the sublime. It can be acquired by art. So if we artistically use certain stylistic devices, it will give greatness to our work. And those figures of speech should be used in a natural manner and in the right place, on the right occasion, in the right manner, with the right motive. That is, we should not just because we want to use such stylistic devices, we should not use it in excess, where it is required, in the apt place and in the apt degree. Only such use strengthens the sublimity for the work. And the chief figures like the rhetorical questions, adjuration, hyper, hyperbaton, and anaphora. So such stylistic devices can be used in our work to beautify our language, but very aptly. And the fourth one is noble diction. Diction, choice of words. So the choosing the right word in the right place is also very much important for gaining greatness to our work. It includes choice of proper words and the use of metaphors and ornamental language. The choice of proper and striking words is essential for producing sublimity. Longinus is of the view that beautiful words are the very light of lofty thought. Yes. So if our work has lofty or noble thought, it should be expressed through beautiful words. Trivial subjects should not be treated in a grand manner like a mock epic. That's right. That is not accepted. And it means that inappropriate magnificence of diction should be avoided. That is, we have to use noble diction to suit to the noble thoughts. So the use of metaphors also contributes a great deal to the sublimity of a work. And finally, um, dignified composition. That is another important source of sublimity. Dignified composition or the harmonious arrangement of words. So the words we choose the correct word, powerful word or noble word, and at the same time we should arrange them in a harmonious way. This is the fifth source of sublimity. It is a great source of persuasion as well as pleasure. It makes the reader share the emotion of the speaker. And it is the sense of harmony that gives charm and organic unity to a word of art. And if the lack of harmony will spoil the dignity and elevation, and it gives the composition an appearance of meanness. So there should be a dignified arrangement of words. So these are all the five sources or elements of sublimity according to Longinus. This is the end of this unit. Let's meet in the next video. Thank you.